Welcome to r/RedditRevenge. This is a story of someone getting back at someone with revenge after being wronged. Thank you, friends, for subscribing to the channel and for so many likes. The first story: I proved to everyone that I'm better than this bee and brought the store to a new level. The second story: client was denied his rights by the government and I made sure that a government employee paid with their job. The third story: I punished the company that was a spammer. On to the first story. 8 years on, it still feels good. I started my current job about 8 years back. I had been made unemployed and started volunteering at a small charity shop to keep myself busy and to help out my friend who was a store assistant there at the time. I was working as an agency worker night shift out at a local milk and cheese factory to cover my bills, but I was there when I could be. In a short space of time, I had the running of the shop down and was given a set of keys. Shortly after that, on the run-up to Christmas, the manager quit and they offered me the job. I was surprised they didn't offer it to my friend, but I later found out that he had been turning up to some shifts high and had been placed on probation. He walked out when I told him they had given me the job. So I was the new manager. My official training was delayed as they just wanted me to keep things running until after the Christmas rush. So they sent me to a successful shop in the city to have a crash course. After Christmas, the shop had been moved into a different area grouping, and I got a new area manager, who we will call AM. Cue the start of 2 years of hell. My town is a fairly small rural town in southern Scotland. It used to be an old market town, so there's a lot of farming down here. AM was in charge of a great number of city shops and started demanding that we make as much income as those shops do. I was allowed no creative liberty until I proved myself against AM's ever-changing goalposts. One visit, she would tell me to rearrange the whole shop, so we would. The next visit, sometimes in the same week, she'd complain that my layout was idiotic, and I was an idiot for doing it that way. This went on for 6 months. I was expected to go to meetings in a town that out of 26 shops, I was the only one that could not get there via public transport, and she refused to pay for vehicle rental, though I was not insured to use my car for work purposes. I still did it and claimed the mileage back, which instead of allowing me to place it against her area manager account, as was done for everyone else, it came out of my shop profits, being marked further against my profits. It was a 2-hour drive to the meeting, and the local rental place didn't open until 8 a.m. The meeting started at 9:30 a.m. I was always a half hour late, and this was marked against me in my personal reviews. There were times that I was fasting as part of my beliefs, and she mocked them at the meetings. When I was fasting and there was a meeting, she would rip into me for not doing it right, or just sometimes tell me that I wasn't believing things right. My input was always ignored. The one time my shop actually got top shop for something, I didn't get a little prize when everyone else did. If it was someone's birthday, there was always cake and we'd have a little whip around, like £5 each, to buy them a gift, except me when mine came, etc. It was horribly excluding. While this was going on, she kept sending me to her favorite shop in the city to get training. Training seemed to consist of me doing their processing for them. Every day away from my shop was a day my shop suffered, as she would not authorize the hiring of a new assistant, so it was being volunteer run, and I didn't have many volunteers at that time, so nothing got done. I would return to piles of donations heaped on the floor, and the rails half empty, end up staying late or sometimes overnight to get it back on track. When AM found out about this, she insulted me further, saying that it was my failure as a manager if I work an extra 8 hours and only manage to get the shop back on its feet. During this time, we were actually making our targets more often than not, I should point out. The shop wasn't failing, but I was made to feel like it was. Certainly, we were not doing as well as I knew we could be, but well, I'll get to that. Every 6 months, we had some kind of personal development review. It's an opportunity for the manager to give some feedback on how they think they're doing, and for the area manager to give some advice and set out a plan. My reviews consisted of, "You're a terrible manager and you should quit. You'll never succeed in this business." In my final review before I got transferred to another area, she put away her notebook and told me that she'd been trying to get me to quit so that she could get someone who was actually halfway useful in the job. It was horrible and humiliating. Once per year, if you got a good PDR, you'd be eligible for a yearly bonus and small pay rise. I never got either, despite the shop being ahead on targets. My feedback to her was to please allow me to run the shop as if it was mine, and not as if I was a glorified shop assistant. To let me make creative decisions about layout, rota, window displays, POS, etc. I was always told that I hadn't shown that I was good enough to do that. She insisted the shop behave and earn like her city center shops. We never would. I knew it. She knew it. I couldn't leave the job for a variety of reasons. Full-time, reasonably paid employment isn't common to find down here. Plus, my dad had had a stroke and I didn't want to move away while he was still in rehabilitation. And my girlfriend was also down here working, so it was fine. I'm also pretty good at not bringing home work with me, so I still got to relax and enjoy my time not in the shop. After 2 years, the shop is passed to a new area and a new area manager. AM literally wrote in her handover notes that I was a nightmare to work with, and the shop will probably close in a year without significant area manager oversight. What she seemed to have forgotten was that the new area manager was actually the shop manager the charity had sent me to do the crash course training with. The manager there had been promoted to area and had essentially been given all the shops nobody wanted to work with as a new area. She took one look at the shop, told me that it didn't look like I was enjoying myself. I very professionally told her what had been happening. She said, "You know your town, you know your shop. You do you and we'll see what happens." So I start to run the shop like it's my own, rather than AM's. Profits rise week 1, up 40%, then 60%. At one point, we were consistently 100% over target for 3 months. On every regional call, AM had to hear about how amazing my shop was doing and how we were regularly the best shop in the region, and on 1 week in the nation, out of over 600 shops. We kept this up for another 2 years, before our targets got a major readjustment. 4 years since then, we're still making targets. Had a couple of record-breaking weeks each year. 2 weeks back, we actually made over 400% of what our old targets were. And every year at the regional conference, AM shoots me a dirty look and I just smile. She gave us up for dead, tried openly to make me quit, made my work life absolutely heck for 2 years, and now I'm outperforming almost every shop in her area. Bwah ha ha. After the shop started showing success, I kept on working 60-hour weeks, even though I'm on a 37.5-hour contract. There was always enough stock, sales on, prices right. We set them ourselves. Shop cover. There was no way I was ever going to allow her to criticize the shop or me again. I've met her several times since at various meetings and make a point of talking about how we keep on having record-breaking weeks and make out weekly, monthly, and yearly targets, which rise by about 5% a year. She walks away from group conversations when this happens. My shop success has become her public shame. It's well known how she treated me amongst the other area managers, especially if there have been other incidents since, with other assistant managers, and managers who if she doesn't like, she treats like hell. Her credibility as a manager has tanked, and it all started because I refused to let her make me quit. She also brings cake to meetings. Her cakes are good, and it was a little point of pride. I learned to bake better. People complained when I didn't bring cake, and I heard my new boss on more than one occasion telling her that my cakes were way better. I think that was mainly just to get a rise, but it was still fun to see. The second story is government auditor from hell. Okay, so I'm a practicing accountant. I can't really identify the country for confidentiality purposes. I had a very dear client who was in the latter stages of cancer. As his condition worsened, we were contacted by the government for an audit. I submitted what I could, but without his assistance, critical pieces of information would be missing. I called the auditor and let her know the situation. Literally without even thinking, she said, "Since you're avoiding me, I'll just disallow everything and find against him." I immediately demanded her name and her government ID. "You're not intimidating me," she said as she gave me her info. I put my practice on hold and asked my client's wife if I could get into her husband's office and search for the documents. With the help of my wife, his wife, and his 2 daughters, we got absolutely everything. I held off until the auditor made good her threat. Then I launched an appeal. In that appeal, I presented all the documents. My client, although having passed by that time, was in the clear, and there would be no government claims against his estate. I then ended the appeal with the following. Due to the auditor's inhuman treatment of my client and her despicable actions, I hereby demand her termination. There was an SH storm that followed. First, her supervisor calls me, tells me that I can't demand her termination. I tell him to F off. Then the shop steward tells me that she's union, and they don't get to fire his people. I tell him that she violated several of their stated parameters, and she can be terminated for cause. Then I get the deputy head of taxation for our region. He takes time and listens, and says that it's difficult, but I should not expect that she loses her job. The final call is her. How dare I? She lost her job. She's an immigrant to our country, and her husband will beat her for losing her job. How can I do this to her? What has she done that was so bad? I basically told her that in this country, we treat our dying people with dignity, that her actions warranted losing her job, and I hope her pension and benefits. She told me she was a year from retirement and she lost her pension. Oh, I'm sorry. Guess that money would be better spent on a human. And the last story is my revenge on a spammer. More than a year ago, I joined a forum which claimed to have no rules. I trolled scammers really hard, and it was a lot of fun. The scammers would eventually block me in the forum and move on. Due to the amusement of the staff, I was made an admin on the forum and helped out with some of the housekeeping and trolling. I deleted a couple of double posts from a company that claimed to perform work in a regulated industry. They went on to double and triple post more of the same thread, and it was really peeving me off. I saw that other admins were cleaning up their threads too. I booted the offender and moved on. I logged on the next day and what do I see? More posts for this company. I booted this person as well. Another one popped up from yet another account, and I was getting sick of their crap. It's at this point that I began a quest to track down information about this company. I found their website, the address listed in the registration on their website, and their business registration at the government. I suspected their business was part of an MLM scheme, so I looked them up in the relevant regulatory body's licensing list. They were not found in the list of licensed entities. Ruh-roh, Shaggy. I comment on one of their Facebook advertisements, noting that they were not listed in the license list for our area, and isn't it a requirement for their industry? I can't tell if they respond, because they block me. I know who I can ask, though. I emailed the regulatory entity and provided screenshots, links, and information about the company, asking if they're legitimate. I received a polite email back thanking me for emailing them, acknowledging that this company was not on the list of companies licensed to provide service in that sector, and that they would look into what I had provided. I kind of forgot about it at this point. 3 months later, I see their crap again, in another place on the internet, so I look them up again. Oh good, they're on the license list now. Well, awesome for them. The next link in Google appears to be a court case, so I click on that. It's an agreement between my government and this company regarding the compliance of this company moving forward. The regulatory body stated that on the day I emailed regulatory body, person who emailed me back began an investigation into the service company. The company would be required to obtain licensing by a certain date and pay what amounts to a 5-figure USD fine. Snap. The new year rolls by, and eventually one of their new employees posts in my forum once. Well, they're at least licensed this time. The next day, they start their blitz posting again, cluttering up the space. Boot again. I Googled them and happened across a really interesting tidbit. They're making similar posts in forums in other areas. I look up the regulatory body for one of those areas, and no surprise, they're not on the license list there either. That particular area of my country is licensing heavy for this sector. Well, another email is off for that, also linking to the court order near me. The regulatory body there writes me back thanking me, saying the company's not a license holder. They note that they'll be taking a serious look into what I emailed them, and add that they're providing this information to the head of licensing. At this point, I'm making a spreadsheet of the places they posted, claiming they conduct business, and I've been submitting the evidence to the regulatory bodies for each location, tracking my progress in research. I've been reusing my email template to save time. Don't spam my forum. It interrupts my trolling. I hope you love these stories. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to know when the new video comes out.